Hi, I'm Frankie.
And I'm Cheyenne.
And we are
Conbini Cult.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm suffering a little bit from kafunsho, from hay fever. I think that was a word of the day back in the day, like a year ago.
Now it is again, kafunsho.
Yeah, so you can hear probably my sniffles throughout the episode, and apologies in advance because I can't control it. But yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I have kafunsho as well. Usually when the plum blossoms come out, that's when the allergies start for me. Yeah, I'm not sniffly. At least not as sniffly as you are. But I'm very itchy. Like my eyes are super itchy. That kind.
I hate how itchy my eyes get. And I'm going to just blame it on kafunsho at this point because I actually had like a bad cold a couple weeks ago. And I don't think it's the cold that stuck around for this long because it's just like, runny nose and itchy eyes and things like that. But I'm hanging in there. I'm kind of like the trade-off for me as well. At least it's warm finally. It's actually hot a little bit today. I'm wearing
it was so hot walking here.
Yeah, like for listeners only, I'm kind of wearing like a little suit jacket because we're going to be serious today. But on the walk over, I was kind of sweaty and I'm a little scared to take this jacket off. I think I'm like sweating through it almost. It's like a sheer. It's like a sheer shirt too. So I don't know. I think it'll dry pretty quick. But it's a little warm. So very thankful, but it's too warm all of a sudden.
I don't know why I wore a wool sweater today.
That looks insane. With a long sleeve underneath that, I'm a little like, are you okay?
I just wanted to get one more use out of it before I put my winter clothes away.
Yeah, that's true. I've kind of like been home on like a home, what do you even call it? It's not bed rest because I'm not like house arrest. For my solitary confinement. I was just kind of in a situation where I needed to like rest at home and like rest and recoup for a long time. And so this is my first time like outside doing something in almost 3 weeks, I think. So I feel like a little, I don't know, like crazy almost. Like I was walking outside and I just kind of like, I felt like so like lethargic almost, like just being outside, like a dead houseplant, like someone who just hasn't seen the sun in 3 weeks. And then I like went outside and it's warm today, all of it. And like I thought it was still winter in my mind, right? And I was like walking outside and like feeling the sun and like my eyes were just like so squinty because I was like, it burns, it's so bright.
So much can change in 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I kind of just like had a moment where I was standing outside and like recharging and soaking up the sun because my body just hasn't seen daylight in almost a month. So good to be here. Happy to have you here. Happy to be here. And I'm excited for spring.
Welcome back to the real world.
Yeah, thanks. I was greeted with like really bad allergies, but it is what it is otherwise. Okay, so for today's topic, you may have heard about a documentary that it didn't just come out. It's been screening at film festivals and stuff for the past year, but it was Oscar and Academy Award nominated, so there's been a lot of talk about it. It's called Box Diaries, and it is about Shiori Ito, the woman who sparked Japan's MeToo movement, and her story and the struggles that she's faced with, coming forward about her assault. So, And it is a pretty heavy topic and a very serious topic that I feel like is very overlooked, if not talked about enough here in Japan. So, thank you for being here and giving us this space to talk about it because it is something that needs to be talked about. We do have a trigger warning for this entire episode,
for the whole episode for sexual assault.
Yeah, so please keep that in mind. If this is a sensitive topic for you, of course, feel free to skip this episode. Because like we said, it's for the whole episode. We're not going to go into any other warnings, right? Like mid-episode,
for the whole episode. But if you do need to skip this one, just know that our next episode is going to be a funny topic again. So we're trying to keep the balance.
We're trying to keep the balance. We love everyone's feedback and comments and everything. And so like we've mentioned before, we kind of started off real light, and then we started getting into these like deep dives about more serious topics in Japan, and then we kind of reached like a really like not a dark place, like, but our topics were like back to back, very, very serious. And so I think, it is important to keep a balance, but still talk about these things. So thank you for joining us today if you are.
Okay. So a little disclaimer before we get into the meat of the topic. Okay, so we've been doing this podcast for about a year.
Yeah.
And somehow we have managed to, for the most part, avoid the angry Japanophiles and nationalists. I am a little worried about this episode though, but silence on stuff like this, that is how people get away with it and why they continue to do it. So it's uncomfortable, but we need to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to make a joke in there, like, maybe we've avoided them so far because we don't have that many listeners. But,
well, that too.
But we do appreciate, out of all of our listeners and subscribers, none of you, thankfully, have, like, made any nasty comments about, like, defending crimes in Japan. And
no one has said anything like that.
Yeah, so we're really thankful to all of you who listen and support and understand, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully we can keep a nice discussion in the comments. Let's keep it respectful. We will not tolerate any victim blaming. We will not tolerate anybody saying that Shiori Ito is a liar. We believe her and we support her.
Yep.
So as I always love to say, you can love Japan and not defend creeps.
Yep.
Thank you.
We've said it, and we've said it many times.
Yeah, how do I trademark it?
I know, right? We need it on like a hat or a shirt at this point.
We will make a t-shirt.
And we say it like kind of giggly and laughing, but like we truly mean it. It is true. And honestly, it's kind of like, it's not depressing, but it's a little like frustrating how we have to say that at the beginning of every episode. And I know we don't.
Don't forget.
Yeah, but I know we don't have to, but like kind of, people could use a reminder. So yeah. Okay.
So before the documentary Black Box Diaries came out in 2017, Shiori Ito published her memoir titled Black Box. Yeah. So that was published in Japan.
Yeah.
And you can also find copies of it in other languages. I'm sure there's definitely an English copy at least. Yeah. So how to watch the documentary? Yeah. It is on Prime Video and Apple TV, but not in Japan. So you need a VPN.
Yeah. So if you are interested in watching it, please go ahead and,
get like a free trial of a VPN or something.
Yeah. How did you like know about this documentary or hear about it? Have you been keeping up with this case since 2017, like since her book was published, or?
I had heard about the case, but I didn't know that she wrote a book.
Yeah, me neither.
And then also because of the award season and this documentary being shown at so many film festivals, that's when I started to hear about it more. And then I found out that it isn't being shown in Japan. So a lot of people are like, what is going on with that? Why won't they show it? But we will get into sort of that.
Yeah.
Should we just start with that?
Sure.
Or do you have anything else?
Well, one thing I wanted to not comment on, but one thing I noticed is, so she, like I said, we didn't really know, she published a memoir about this incident in 2017. And I was thinking about it, and I think you as well. We were here. We just got to Japan in 2017. And so I was trying to like think back, like, did I hear about this at some point? Like, I know I was very fresh in Japan in 2017. And at that point, me personally, I didn't like speak a level of Japanese or have an interest enough to watch Japanese like TV, news, media, and things like that. So I'm trying to remember, like, did I ever see, coverage on this case in the news back in the day? Like, I probably have seen, like news about it. But like I said, at that time, I had no idea what was going on, like language-wise or culturally here in Japan. And so I kind of, I don't know, I guess as like a self-reflection, I'm a little like upset that I technically could have been keeping up with it this whole time, and like, but that's all I wanted to comment on. And now that I know that this memoir does exist, I would like to read it. Do you have a copy of it, or like have you ever looked into buying it? Is it in English?
I was looking it up today, how to get the English copy. Yeah. So I'm not sure about any bookstores. I am going to Kyoto on Monday to check out a couple bookstores. Yeah. But if not, I guess, unfortunately, might have to use Amazon for that.
Yeah, I would say recently, because I have a Kindle, so I've been doing, I read on my Kindle all the time. But this side tangent related to books and sounds really silly, but I was like, wow, buying books is so expensive. Like, why do I have to keep buying books? And then, like, my dumb brain was like, oh, that's what a library is for. You know, like libraries do exist and you can borrow books for free. And so I did recently become I did recently get a library card at the Osaka Public Library. So I'm going to search if they do have this book in Japanese or in English, because considering just the way they refuse to, you know, talk about this situation so openly and like share the documentary in particular, I'm a little curious if they do have different translations of it at the library. But the book, not a spoiler alert, but the book was sold in bookstores here in Japan at the time.
Yeah,
and she was selling copies, and people, you can buy it. Of course, it's not, you know, like blacklisted or anything, but I'm a little curious, if the library has it. So I'll check.
We'll see.
Yep.
Before we get into the documentary itself, I just wanted to discuss briefly like some of the main reasons why it is not being shown in Japan. And basically her legal team flagged there are voice recordings and video footage that were used without permission. So, you know, showing people's faces, like private conversations and recordings. I did. So I watched a trailer of this movie and there were a lot of comments about that. So I was like, okay, well, what is the actual reason?
Like comments in English or like comments in Japanese from Japanese people?
Both.
Okay, interesting.
The trailer was in English, but a lot of people went on to comment about that. So I was trying to find out, okay, what is the actual situation?
Right.
So I found a good article from Asahi Shimbun. It is titled, Shiori Ito's film to be revised after unauthorized use of media.
Okay.
So I figured we can just, you know, kind of popcorn style.
Sure.
You read one paragraph, I read the other one.
All right.
Because I think the whole article is very informative.
Yeah.
Okay. Please.
I'll start. Oh, sure. Journalist Shiori Ito apologized on February 20th for using video and audio footage without permission in an Oscar-nominated documentary film she directed.
I sincerely apologize to those whose consent was overlooked, Ito said in a statement. We will work on the film so that individuals cannot be identified, adding that she will make the necessary corrections.
Black Box Diaries follows the rape case filed in 2015 against former high-profile journalist Noriyuki Yamaguchi and the response to Ito defying societal norms and publicly speaking out as a victim.
Ito filed a criminal lawsuit against the former reporter in charge of a quasi-rape in 2015, alleging that she had unwanted sexual intercourse with him at a hotel. Yamaguchi was referred to the prosecutor's office but was not indicted.
Meanwhile, in a civil lawsuit, the incident was found to have been sexual intercourse without consent, and Yamaguchi was ordered to pay compensation, and the lawsuit ended.
Black Box Diaries was screened at more than 50 overseas film festivals in 2024 and is in the running for Best Documentary Feature Film at this year's Academy Awards. It has not yet been decided whether it will be released in Japan.
Yoko Nishihiro, who led the legal team representing Ito's successful civil lawsuit, flagged the documentary's unauthorized use of video and audio over legitimacy concerns.
This includes security footage submitted by a hotel that shows an intoxicated Ito being carried into the building. Ito's team had signed a pledge not to use the footage outside of court proceedings.
If the fact that the evidence from the trial has been made public is known, we will be unable to obtain cooperation in future sexual assault cases, Nishihiro said.
Ito's former lawyer summarized exchanges during a news conference in Tokyo on February 20th, beginning with Nishihiro's explanation that she had requested that permission be secured before using the security camera footage. Ito's side responded that it would, but did not in the end.
Nishihiro also said that she first learned at a screening of the film last July that unauthorized recordings of her phone calls had been used.
I've been trying so hard to protect her for 8.5 years, and I feel like I've been completely torn apart, said her former lawyer. I want her to explain and be held accountable.
Katsuhiko Tsukuda, who is representing Nishihiro, said that there have been multiple complaints that the footage was used without consent, and called for its removal or other measures to be taken.
Ito was scheduled to hold a news conference the same day and screen a redacted version of the film, but canceled at the last minute citing ill health and instead released a written statement.
Regarding the use of evidence, Ito said, although we did not get the hotel's permission, we changed the exterior, interior, and shape of the taxi. It is natural that there is varied criticism, but we decided to use it in the film, placing importance on the public interest.
She apologized for failing to confirm with individuals regarding other included footage and audio and said, we will do our best to screen the film overseas by using a redacted version. Okay. See, I read that before watching the documentary.
Yeah. And you sent it to me too, to review and everything. And same, I read it too. And I saw it and I was like, okay, makes sense. Maybe I'm not like a filmmaker or anything, but it sounds like, getting permission to use like recordings and images and things is needed. So it sucks, but like maybe it's okay, but it was necessary in this case. I don't know. Is like kind of how I was thinking about it and going into watching the documentary.
Yeah.
But
if it is possible for her to submit a new version of it with, redacted, like, or, hiding
their identity? No.
When you change someone's voice, what do you call that?
Changing their voice? What is that called? Hiding their identity? Concealing their identity?
Yeah, I thought there was a word for
voice alteration.
Yeah, so if it's possible for her to submit a redacted version where you can't, hear people's voices directly, if they can, manipulate the audio so it's not the person's exact voice and cover more people's faces, if that's what it takes for the film to get shown in Japan, then yeah.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Yeah. But we'll probably get into it as we're discussing the film, because it's almost like, I don't know, what was so bad about it? Like,
Yeah, but I don't know. We're not lawyers.
Yeah. So
it's a perspective of just randos.
Yeah. Again, this is like all our opinion based on like how we feel and what we think about the case. We're not lawyers. We're not professionals, anything like that. So don't come for us. And yeah. Okay.
We just wanted to know more about it.
Yes. Okay.
So a brief overview of the incident and the case. In 2015, Shiori Ito emailed Noriyuki Yamaguchi, a prominent journalist, to ask about job openings, and they scheduled a meeting. She was surprised to find that this meeting ended up being a private dinner for only the two of them. During the dinner, she suddenly felt dizzy and went to the restroom. The next thing she remembers is that she woke up in a hotel room while being raped.
Mm-hmm. And so Yamaguchi was never criminally convicted. He lost the civil lawsuit and was ordered to pay Ito 3.3 million yen, so about $30,000 in damages, as she did not consent. He tried to countersue Ito for the damage to his reputation, but it was dismissed.
So, knowing that, let's get into the actual documentary.
Yes, so I'm going to read these points on my phone, so you can see yours at the same time, because we kind of did it together. Okay, so we did watch this documentary, not together, like separately, and we're going to talk about it here today. Yeah. And so we're just going to share kind of like, I bullet pointed my thoughts as I was watching the documentary.
Me too. So we might have some of the same.
I think, a lot of them do overlap. And so we're going to, I guess, do you want to just get into it, like, in order, like as the documentary is going on, like our thoughts throughout it? Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So, how does it start, actually? So it does start with her calling a family member, right? I think you wrote this in your notes, right? Yeah.
It starts with a phone call from her sister, and her sister is saying that their mother agrees that Shiori should come forward and report what happened, but they wanted her to keep herself anonymous because she will be stigmatized and seen as a victim.
Yeah. And I wrote the exact memo. So I said, I was like kind of like writing and spewing my own like words, how I talk. So I'm sorry if it doesn't sound so intellectual, but I wrote, it's wild that she asked her not to show her face because people would view her as a victim, like Frankie said. Because in my opinion, that is exactly what she is. She is a victim in this case. And, I understand how hard it must be to go against like your family's wishes. And Shiori Ito does talk about that later in the documentary about, wanting to respect her family's wishes and be a part of her family, but also feeling the need to stand up for herself and for what is right. And so I just want to give, kudos to Ito, to Shiori, for speaking out about this and showing her face and like never backing down despite what anyone says, even her own family, right?
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
For the documentary to start off already like that, I was kind of like, ugh. Like, again, I don't know her family. I don't know what her relationship is like with them, but
yeah, I mean, of course, they're thinking of, what is the best for
right,
her.
Right,
because,
right.
Imagine the amount of, like, vitriol that she faced because she came forward with it. And the court of public opinion is awful.
Especially, like, not only in Japan, everywhere around the world, but it sounds very particularly bad here. And especially in this case, we're going to get into some of the comments and some of the things that like Shiori Ito was told by, viewers of the film or people who've like seen her book and have been keeping up with the case. And it's so messed up. But
yeah.
Okay.
So we already said that Yamaguchi was not criminally convicted. So yeah, because of that, Shiori Ito decided 2 years later to go public with it to get the case reopened. So when she was holding a press conference about it, there was some of the reporters said, like, oh, it's really unusual for a rape victim to be showing their face when they're doing this. And then she said, I have nothing to hide. If I don't speak out, the law won't change.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of the law not changing, how old is this law against rape? It's like 110 years old.
110 years old.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with, I think it favors, what did it say? It favors like housewives to like be protected or something like that. And it's mostly in cases of physical violence or, you know, domestic violence and stuff. But none of it really has to do with consent being in the picture of this. And so when rape cases are, you know, reported because of, you know, they didn't consent, a lot of it just gets swept under the rug here because they're like, well, we can't really do anything about it. So
yeah, we will get into that a little bit later. Yeah, these laws did change, partially because of Shiori Ito. So you want to get into some of the disgusting comments from the public?
Did you write them down? Sure.
I wrote them down.
Okay.
They were from both men and women.
Of course.
It's
which
always
is so nasty.
like extra pain when it's from a woman.
Right.
But someone said, Japanese men are attractive and women exploit them to advance their careers. She just wants revenge. She criticizes Japan but still wants to live here. She should be strangled.
Foul.
I also made a note. I think there's a reason that she took this case internationally as well. Because they talk a lot about, in this documentary, about the victim blaming culture. And I mean, it does happen everywhere in the world with victim blaming and stuff. But maybe she felt like more people internationally could understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, I see that. Especially like, was she already working in Seattle, or she has experience like working outside of Japan and overseas, right? Because she speaks English very well and stuff. Exactly. So I think, you know, she is very culturally aware of like what, you know, how this could be perceived outside of Japan too. So that does make sense. I did write another comment actually. One of the nasty comments, she said, people were calling her like a prostitute because, you know, one of the buttons of her suit she was wearing was like, I guess, a little unbuttoned or buttoned too far down to the public's liking. And so I just wrote that down because it made me want to vomit. But that should put a picture in your head of like how much victims, and especially women in Japan and everywhere, are scrutinized for every little thing when it comes to sexual assault cases. Again, it's so nasty to give that like, well, what was she wearing kind of comment, right? It's very much giving that. And so even she was saying, you know, she was advised by, who is it, her lawyer or someone in this press conference to wear a suit. They were just like, if you don't wear a suit, no one's going to take you seriously. And so that advice on its own is just so nasty. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So shall we get into the investigation?
Yes.
Okay. So they said in the documentary that only 4% of rape victims bring their case to the police. And the police, that is the biggest hurdle that they face. And part of what they have to do when reporting is having to reenact the incident on a life-sized doll. Yeah,
I commented that on that too. Because like I've heard rumors kind of about that. I've like heard it before. Definitely.
I didn't know it was a life-size doll.
I didn't know it was a life-size doll.
I thought it was like a little like a plushie or something.
Yeah. And they have to kind of like for kids in like these kinds of cases too, they have to be like, where did they touch you, you know? And so I thought it was kind of something like that, which is so unnecessary in this situation, especially to have an adult do that. And so you, like you said, the life-size doll, I like was in shock hearing about that. It's already so traumatic to relive that event over and over again when you have to explain it, especially if you are reporting it, right? And so it's like, where do they get off on that? Like, why do they need to see it be demonstrated? Yeah,
that surprised me. So initially, they had an arrest warrant for Yamaguchi. But then they were actually like at Narita airport ready to arrest him.
Yeah.
But then the investigators, superiors called him and they were like, oh, never mind, scrap it.
Yeah, yeah. And so the investigator like knew that he wasn't told a reason. He was just, you know, following his orders and stuff. But the thing that like really pissed me off was when she did go to the police station and they were saying like, you know, we couldn't arrest him. And the main investigator, they call him Investigator A throughout this documentary.
Yeah.
And so they tell her that Investigator A is just no longer on the case. And she's like, well, why? And they're like, he was transferred for doing a good job. Like, and so we don't know any more details after that. They just tell her he gets transferred and he's just like in a different department. And my first thoughts after hearing this, I was like, well, that's why like tenkin, like transfer culture in Japan is just, it just needs to be like, not abolished, but I feel like depending on what field you work, it is so unnecessary. Like, what do you mean police officers get transferred? Like mid-case? Like how? I'm sure that does happen, but like, it was just, I found it so shocking, but then that was before I realized that they actually did have the arrest warrant and someone else told him to cut off the arrest. And so it just shows like how shady the police are. Not all of them, but you know, in this situation, how shady this entire situation is because they just lied to her face saying he got transferred when like he knows he didn't get transferred for doing a good job. They just like didn't want him to you know, arrest him and arrest Yamaguchi. And they don't get into why that arrest warrant was like,
well, there's some
there's some like speculation, right? And we will get into that later on, but
or now.
Yeah, we can get into it now. I'm down.
Okay, yeah. So this journalist, Yamaguchi, he wrote a biography of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the late Shinzo Abe, 2 weeks before. It was published 2 weeks before Shiori's case was dismissed. So was this also for Abe's image? Was it for book sales?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like Frankie mentioned, this guy was like really close acquaintances with Abe. And that kind of just doesn't surprise me as to why this was tried to be swept under, you know, the rug all this time. Side tangent about Abe. I apologize because I cannot remember the name of this incident, but there is an incident that has been proven like involving former Prime Minister Abe. And what is it called? It's called like something incident. I'm so sorry. But basically like his wife, I'm going to summarize it because it's not related to this case, but in summary, his wife, like it had to do with buying property and like the amount they paid for the property or like tax evasion, something like fudging the numbers and like some kind of property that his wife was involved in. And because he has power to basically, you know, conceal that information, he ordered this certain department to like fudge those numbers or to just hide that information. And one of the workers in there, he was a good guy. He loved like being a public servant. He loved being a koumuin and he was just doing his job. And then one day he was instructed to basically lie. And it wasn't like a small white lie. It was like a big thing. It was on the news and everything. And it just ate away at him so much and ate away at his conscience so much that he literally lost his mind. He felt paranoia. He was just spiraling because he couldn't, he did what he was told, but then he couldn't like live with that decision. And literally he could not live with that decision. He unalived himself.
Oh my gosh.
Eventually because of the guilt and everything. And so because of that knowledge, I'm not surprised. Like why this was also tried or why this was also being tried to be swept under the rug, like I said.
Yeah. That just adds another level of scariness to it. Because she also kind of feared for her life. Yeah. She said, when she published her book, she said that, like, if I die and it looks like a suicide, please investigate because
it wasn't me.
I won't do that.
Yeah. And there was also a section of the documentary, she's like checking her house for like bugs, like wires. Oh, yeah, like as if someone bugged her house. And so to not even feel safe in your own home. And, you know, she was like, okay, well, if we have any serious talks, she's like talking to her friend. She's like, if we talk about anything serious, like we have to do it in the bathroom because that seems like the only place. Yeah. So to have to like go through that, it's just all very traumatizing. Yeah.
So speaking of politicians and stuff, they were showing some footage of parliament meetings. And there was this one guy at parliament. His name was Yunoki.
Oh, thank you for writing his name down. Yeah.
So he was not backing down with asking questions.
Love that man.
And then he was asking something about Abe. This was before Abe passed away. But some other people were trying to dismiss him, and he's like, no, I'm asking Abe. Like, I need this man to answer my question directly. He's right here. Let him answer.
We stand him. Every like scene he's in or every footage he's in, he is very, I don't know, adamant in his actions about just confronting the issue, truly. And so I love him. I think I put a screenshot of him in our notes because I was like, who is this man?
I just put in the notes, hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, like, now that we're talking about him, there was a part in the film too where he is asking, like, you know, why was the arrest warrant like taken? What do you call it? Like taken away? Redacted? Not redacted. Why was the arrest warrant
revoked?
Revoked? Yeah. You know, you were there. You were at the airport, and what was the reason, you know? And I don't know what to call him because it's not a judge, and it wasn't Abe he was talking to. It was like one of the main dudes in that courtroom. You see he's like confused. Like he has no idea like what this case is, what's going on ever. And then there's like 6 dudes around him, like filling him in on like the details of the Shiori Ito case and like what's going on and stuff. And then they say like cut the stenographer, like cut the mics and everything. And they're like talking about it. And then they turn their mics back on and they're like, we will not discuss this or something. So it's kind of like, I don't know, they just look like a bunch of clowns. Like, one, how do you not know like what is happening or what case they're discussing? And 2, it's just like, I don't know, it like really frustrated me to see all of those men like surrounding him and like, you can't hear what they're saying, but it very much looks like, no, this is like that one thing we can't talk about. Like, no, just I don't know, like, you know. And so I really love what's his name, Yunoki, for again coming to Shiori's defense time and time again in these parliament meetings. Yeah. Do you want to talk about, I wanted to mention Shiori Ito met up with a bunch of veteran journalists who were working for TBS, which is the company that Yamaguchi was working for, and her as well.
Tokyo Broadcasting Company?
Yeah. And one of the journalists there, I wrote his name down.
TBS, Tokyo Broadcasting
Not System?
Service? I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the S?
I don't know. I don't
My
care
brain's
enough.
not working.
But there was one journalist there named Kanehida, and he made a comment. He was like apologizing to Shiori, but it just sounded, I don't know, really fishy to me, kind of, because he said, Yamaguchi is my kouhai, so his, like, what do you call that, subordinate? Like, his younger colleague. Yeah. I feel guilty for raising this kind of man. And I was like, what do you mean you raised this man? Like, I understand senpai culture or senpai kouhai culture here in Japan. Like, yes, as a senpai, as like, you know, an older person or a leader figure, it is kind of like your, not responsibility, but people really take it upon themselves to like, you know, guide, for lack of a better word, their younger coworkers, their kouhais. And it's kind of like a big brother, big sister kind of system here. And so like, maybe the subtitles in this case to say like raise was a little off, but like it just felt very weird. Like, what do you mean?
Like, I feel responsible for
kind of, and like I get it. I understand his guilt. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. It sounds like, I don't know, in my opinion, you don't need to come to this guy's, or you don't need to blame yourself or put any responsibility on yourself for this dude's actions. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I wanted to say. Like, it just sounds weird that you're apologizing on his behalf. Because if you do that, do you also partake in this behavior? Like, and now you've gotten caught and you're saying sorry for him. Like, again, it caught me off guard because I was like, why are you saying sorry for him? You know, like, I'm sorry I raised this dude. It's like, you're not his parent. Also, like, this man is so old. Like, you know, it's not like he's a young dude at all. And, he also said another thing that kind of just made me like, ooh, was, so Ito Shiori was mentioning how she wants to interview Nakamura, right? Who is Nakamura in this case?
Was that the
Did I mean Yamaguchi?
Head of the Tokyo Police Department?
Yeah. So she wanted to interview him, and he's kind of like a big person in this case. And Kanehida, this journalist, he was like, you're going to interview him as like you, the victim, the main person in this case. I'd only do that in extreme circumstances. And then my comment was like, bitch, this is an extreme circumstance. Like, this is the only option she feels like she has left, you know, like no one else is listening to her at this point. And so again, it was just another comment that I was like, okay, like, yeah. So, sorry, that's what I wanted to mention. And then, so as the documentary is going on, sorry, I keep calling it a documentary. Should I say film?
No, it is a documentary.
Film. And so, you know, as it's going on, it's kind of showing her, you know, going through all of like the legal process and talking to her family and her friends about the situation and stuff. And she makes a phone call to her mom. And I know we mentioned her little sister at the beginning of this because that's how the film starts. But halfway through, you know, she calls her mom to let her know that Nakamura won't be prosecuted. I'm sorry. I said Nakamura. Is it supposed to be Yamaguchi? Yeah. So she calls her mom to let her know that in the criminal case, Yamaguchi will not be prosecuted. And her mom, again, it can be a cultural thing. We don't see the mom's face. We don't see her reaction. All we hear is her talking on speakerphone. But like, did you get the vibe? She sounded kind of like relieved or like fake about it.
Like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, like, okay. I don't know. I think and again, this can be a thing because in Japan,
it's hard
like,
to say. We don't know.
It's hard to say. We don't know her. But like, just from the phone call, her mom was like, oh, what? Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, it just didn't sound as heartfelt as I wanted it to be. But again, I that's my personal opinion. I don't know like what their relationship is like. But just like hearing that, how her mom was kind of like, oh, what? Oh, that's like really unfortunate. Maybe that's all she could say, you know, but just like hearing that after hearing about her family, like wanting to not show her face and everything, I was just kind of like, could you not sound a little bit more upset or like, you know, supportive of the daughter? And there was like some comments from her dad that kind of like made me upset too. Again, I understand as a parent, her dad was saying, you know, like he said, I just want you to live a normal life, you know, meet a man, get married, like do all the regular life stuff. And she was like, that won't make me happy. Yeah, that won't make me happy. You know, I can't just like forget about it. So in that context, it really just sounded like her family was trying to like get this, you know, done with as soon as they could too. And so I really commend Shiori for just, like I said earlier, standing her ground and, you know, not like she was going against her family's wishes, but she knew that there could be like some rifts caused, you know, if she decided to move on the way she was. So
yeah, I mean, again, we don't know them, we didn't see them. Yeah, I would guess, you know, they're just thinking in their mind what it would be her best interest, like the best way to protect her.
Right.
So
yeah, and again, like as parents, you know, I'm more than sure they were, you know, on her side and not blaming her for anything. It was more just like, I wish I could see more
rage.
Yeah, rage coming from them. It just seemed very calm almost. And I was like, no! But again, that's like a personal thing. Yeah. And then as we continue on throughout the film, she does meet up with Investigator A again, right? Or she calls him a lot. They're in contact a lot because Investigator A, although at first, you know...
He's the one who was transferred out of the case.
Yeah, so he's the one that had the arrest warrant and then it was revoked and everything. Yeah. And so he does try to support her as much as he can. You know, he gives her a call and they talk about, you know, like he did tell her the truth. He was the one that told her the truth about like, yeah, I'm sure they told you I was transferred. And she was like, oh yeah, they said it's because you did like a good job. And he's like, no, like I was just transferred like because they forced me out of the case basically. Like, and he just had to, you know, he still needs his job and he chose to stay in the police department. And so that's why he felt like he couldn't say anything more than that. Yeah. And so like I do appreciate him being invested in the case and still helping her out and stuff. But again, like, sorry, rage comment from me. He was asking her, you know, like, is there anything I can do? And she was like, well, I would love for you to like use your name and like speak out on this case and like talk in court about it. And then he was like, well, if I do that, you have to marry me. Bro, this is like not the time. Like that is so unnecessary to say that. And so it's kind of like...
And he's like, yeah, I want to take you to dinner. Do you like ramen?
Yeah. And like, so I saw that too. And I felt the same way because he was like, is there, you know, I hope you're doing okay. Like, are you eating? Like, chanto tabeteru? You know, she was just like, I'm surviving. And so like, I was trying my best to take that as like from a father-daughter standpoint of like, okay, well, like, you know, what do you like to eat? And she's like, I like ramen. He's like, okay, let's go eat ramen sometime. But like, if he did not say that, okay, you have to marry me comment, it would have sounded more like sincere. Yeah. Like it would, but like saying that after joking to a victim of sexual assault that like, okay, well, marry me and then I'll do this for you. Like, fuck out of here. Like, that was crazy. And so again, I was just like, bro, like time and place, like what the heck? I don't know. So I felt strongly enough about it to write it down. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we kind of get into some of the MeToo stuff. So should we just briefly share about the history of the MeToo movement?
Yes.
Because it gained a lot of traction online in the US in 2017 with the Harvey Weinstein cases, but that's not where it originated.
Yeah, so after doing a little bit of research, as maybe many of you remember, Alyssa Milano was the one who tweeted the hashtag MeToo on Twitter in October of 2017, which helped popularize the movement. However, I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, Tarana Burke, an activist in New York City, had been using the phrase Me Too since 2006 to raise the awareness of sexual assault and harassment, and especially against, women of color. And so this Tarana Burke is the one who actually made the Me Too movement. And so it's been around for a long time, almost 20 years at this point. Yeah. So just wanted to give her some credit and let people know about her, activism and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that also motivated Shiori Ito as well to keep going. And there was some kind of conference thing regarding Me Too, and there was a room full of other supporters.
Like female supporters and journalists, I think.
Maybe some victims, maybe survivors. Yeah. Journalists and supporters. But there was another journalist there. I made a note of this. She said she spoke about not coming forward when something happened to her. And she regretted not doing that because it was like saying I don't care about the next generation. Like she felt like if she had come forward, maybe it could have helped people in the future. Yeah. But so it's never too late.
Yeah, it's never too late, and again, we can't put that one lady at fault or blame her for anything, of course. And so, yeah, again, we really support and commend Shiori Ito for speaking out about this, especially like we said, in a place like Japan that really tries to push topics like this down. And speaking of just like women and support and stuff, I really loved the grannies on the street. There's a scene where it's like 3 older women or something. They're like grandma age, and they're shouting, in support of Shiori Ito. This was after her book was published, so they read the book. They're really updated with everything in there. They were calling out Yamaguchi and Abe and saying, calling out all their BS and stuff, and then the camera crew and Shiori happened to walk by, right? Yeah. And so it must have just felt so validating for her to see that there are people, in support of her. And so it was kind of like a cute moment because even those grannies were like, oh my God, it's you, it's her. And so they had a nice conversation, and that was really a good scene.
Give another hell yeah to the grannies.
I know. I wrote that in my comments too. Yep. Okay. And my other point, I just talk about the final hearing and the doorman.
The doorman,
so we're on the same page.
I wanted to talk about the doorman
too.
So the incident when Shiori was taken to a hotel by Yamaguchi, there is footage. It is blurred out, but you can see him dragging her out of the taxi. Yeah. And there's a doorman. He's blurred, but the doorman got in touch with her after her memoir was published and some of these things the trial had started at this point, but the doorman emailed her and he said he remembered the incident. He did report it to the police, but the hotel forced him to keep quiet.
This is the Sheraton Hotel, by the way. Yeah. Just calling them out. Okay.
Are we going to get sued for that? I mean, it's a fact.
It's a fact. It's in the documentary. It says the name of the hotel in there.
Yeah.
I'm just stating a fact. Okay.
Yeah. And then they spoke on the phone later, and she asked him if she could use his name in court. And he was like, yeah, I would be happy for you to do that. If I face any backlash, it's nothing compared to the suffering that you're facing. And he agreed that the repercussions for sexual offenses here are too mild.
Yeah.
That was I cried a lot.
I was like really tearing up about that too, because it's one thing it sounds so sad and like such the bare minimum.
It's to sympathize.
Like it sounds like it's one thing in these cases, if the victim is a woman, because sexual assault happens to men too. We are not saying that it doesn't at all. In this case though, of course, seeing scenes like women supporting Shiori Ito and being on her side and stuff, it like really tugged at my heartstrings hearing a man also being on her side and like acknowledging that the repercussions were so mild, and he said, what did he say? Oh my gosh, I forgot to write his quote down, but basically he was just acknowledging that, she's been through a lot and he knows that she deserves justice and everything. Although I do have a comment about this scene when they were talking on the phone, and he is recounting the event to her. So you hear the conversation on speakerphone, or I'm sorry, she is kind of summarizing what he was telling to her about like the incident and like what he reported and stuff. And this isn't anything against him. I felt like it could have been like a translation or a subtitle issue. I'm not too sure. But she said the doorman. So she is quoting the doorman saying, "Naku yo na koe o kikoete mashita." So in English, the subtitles said that it sounded like she was moaning loudly. And again, this can be just like a linguistic thing. Like maybe the word moaning in English is translated to naku in Japanese, but naku also means cry. And so they don't like specify. Yell. Like it could, like what, if he's saying like naku yo na koe kikoete mashita, like I could hear a voice that sounded like, I wish he kind of specified, or the subtitles could have specified like crying or moaning, because especially like in a sexual assault case, like moaning, the word moaning in like,
that makes it sound
relation
like it was positive,
it sounds like kind of positive. And so I really wish I had some clarification about that.
I hope that was just a subtitle error.
Yeah. Because I heard that and I read the subtitle and I was like, what? So again, and that's like a thing that can be an issue for people who don't speak Japanese or don't understand Japanese. Because if they read a subtitle that says moaning, then they could go full attack mode on this guy and be like, how could you think she was moaning, or like, or full attack mode against Shiori and saying like, you were moaning, and so it's one of those words that can like really change the severity or like the implication of everything happening in that moment. And so that was just one thing I wanted to comment on. But yeah, other than that, I really do appreciate this hotel worker or this doorman at the hotel. Yeah. Okay.
So as we mentioned earlier, she did win the civil suit against him, and he had to pay damages for that. And there was a press conference after that they both attended.
Yeah.
So, again, brave on her part to sit in a room with this person again. But a foreign reporter asks him, like, what, does he have any regrets or does he feel any remorse? And Yamaguchi still doubles down and says he did nothing illegal, but he regrets the situation.
Yeah, and he kind of like, before he said he regrets the situation, he tried to defend. He like defended himself saying like, well, I'm sure you all know as journalists here, if I say regret, like I regret something, it sounds like I was guilty, but I'm not saying I'm guilty, but I do want to say I regret it. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, and so I was just like, okay, whatever. And also when he was called to the stage, for that press conference, some people were clapping. Did you catch that?
No, I didn't.
Some people clapped, and I was like, why the frick are people clapping for this dude when he's like walking on stage? I could have misheard something, but like it was not one person. Like there were a few claps happening in there. And so I was like, gross. Okay. And so the fact that he's like still doubling down and saying he didn't commit a crime, I thought was like, what a joke, And then one thing I did catch, it could be accidental because he starts out speaking in English, which is his second language. So it could just be like a mishap on his end, like getting confused with English, or it could be intentional. I don't know, but I wanted to point it out. He says like, because she suffered a lot. And I'm like, whether you got confused between like pronouns I and she in the situation speaking English, that could be the case. I don't know. But also it like, language mistake or not, it sounded to me like he still thinks he suffered, but then in that moment he was like, oh shit, and then like changed it to she. to, you know, sound like less guilty, I guess. And so, yeah, anyway, I just wanted to point that out. But that was like my notes for the whole thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, same. That's what I had for the documentary.
Yeah. So please go watch it.
Yes. Yes, and I hope they make a redacted version to be released in Japan.
Yeah.
But just a couple more things. I'll give a little bullet point. So one about the MeToo movement, two about a manga artist who defamed Shiori Ito as well, and then also the legal changes that did happen because of this.
Okay.
So, Me Too. So, Me Too in Japan, it changed to from Me Too to We Too. So people could express their support without revealing their identity or sharing their personal experience because of the strong victim blaming culture.
Yeah. And you know what? Baby steps. If that's what it takes for people to come out, then it is what it is. It is still really unfortunate that because of the heavy victim blaming culture here, they have to change the hashtag, you know, to say we. But again, anything helps at this point. I appreciate anyone, you know, who comes out. So
yeah, that would be really scary to just all of a sudden be like, here's my face, here's my story.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Okay.
I also found this article was suggested to me based on the one we read before about why the film won't be shown here.
Okay.
So there was a manga artist who was sued by Shiori Ito and ordered to pay 1.1 million yen. At the time, the conversion was $9,680 in damages for tweets that defamed her character, basically saying that, you know, she was a liar, she was faking it.
Yeah.
And that manga artist was a woman, by the way, so extra ew for that.
Have you been picked yet?
Probably not. Yeah. And also 2 men who retweeted some of her posts were also ordered to pay money in damages. It was 110,000 yen. So I guess at the time about $1,000.
Yeah. Good for them. Like, how disgusting. Like, and not only just like this manga artist, I'm sure there was, you know, tons of people on Twitter and everything, like making comments and everything. And even outside of the courthouse too, there was a lady who was shouting at her.
Liar.
She was like shouting at her, like, you're a liar. Like, how can you act like so like above everyone else? Like you're an idol or something, you know? Yeah,
and some anonymous emails she was getting. Like, I'm so ashamed to be the same gender as you.
Oh my God, yeah, that long email. And she was just like, well, it's giving like, you know, Pearl.
Yes.
What is her name? She's like a
just pearly things.
Like it was like that. I was like, did she write this, or like did Yamaguchi's wife write this or something? Because it was like, I was raised right to know that like how to avoid situations like this, and you're like, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself for coming out, and you're a liar, and you know, men wouldn't do this, and like just a long stupid anonymous email from someone, and so gross. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on a positive note, let's talk about some of the legal changes and reforms that happened.
Okay, yes, please. So first of all, the 2017 reform. So this was the first change in over a century here. So what that means is the definition of rape was broadened to include forced oral and anal sex. Very surprised it was not up until that point, but okay. The minimum prison sentence for rape increased from 3 years to 5 years, and prosecution was no longer dependent on victims filing complaints. Authorities could now pursue cases independently.
Okay.
Still 3 years? Are you joking? To 5 years? Still? 5? 5? Okay.
And then some things that happened in 2023. These are further changes influenced by the MeToo movement. So the legal definition of rape was expanded to non-consensual intercourse, moving away from requiring proof of physical violence and intimidation. So yeah, before that, just saying I did not consent was not reason enough.
Yeah, how awful.
Also... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and you'll hear that in one of the conversations in the beginning of the documentary where they were like, well, we can't move on because you don't have proof. And then she was like, you know, giving her statement saying like, you know, they're like, well, what time did you leave the hotel? Like, how did you know? You know, she's like, well, I woke up and I didn't know where I was and someone was on me. And they're like, well, when did you leave the hotel? She's like, around 5:30. Or they're like, well, when did it happen? She's like, probably 5. They're like, how do you know? And she's like, well, because I left the hotel around 5:30. And they're like, no, you didn't. You left the hotel at 5:50. Like, already, you know, such a strong victim blaming start. And so... Anyway, you'll hear it in one of the phone calls that clearly they, at this time, they relied on evidence only and not just saying you didn't consent. So, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Another positive change, the age of consent was raised from 13 to 16, addressing long-standing criticism. This is another thing that took over 100 years to change.
16 is still so wild, but okay.
Intoxication and psychological control were added as factors that could invalidate consent. Great. And the statute of limitations for reporting rape was extended from 10 to 15 years.
Good.
Yeah, so that's basically all I had.
Yeah.
So just some closing thoughts. Again, I think people feel emboldened to do these despicable things because they're rarely held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So props to Shiori for her resilience and her refusal to be silenced.
Exactly. And I also just wanted to say that I know what we see on camera isn't everything, you know, about like what she really is going through and feeling like. But I just found it really admirable the way she remains so positive throughout this process. I know she probably had some down days too, but at least what you see in this film, you know, she does remain quite positive. She's occasionally like making jokes. You know, when she was like chasing after Yamaguchi to interview him, he sped away because he was in his car and they couldn't catch him. And then she makes light jokes, you know, like, I should have like eaten breakfast or I should have worn sneakers. Like she tries her best to really, stay positive. And, you know, she does remain to be quite like, you know, goofy and keep her own personality. She does like dances around. She makes funny gestures when hanging out with her friends, you know, and the end of the film ends with her playing I Will Survive and like kind of jamming out to it after the Yamaguchi was found guilty in the civil case, right? Yeah. And so it's just like, whether it was for cameras or, you know, everyone has their ways to cope. And so like whatever the reason, it was just so admirable to see her not break down throughout the film at all. And so I just wanted to, give praise and commend her for that. But anyway, that was our closing thoughts. I do have one thing. Have you ever seen, watching this and learning about this case reminded me, have you ever seen the movie Promising Young Woman?
I have seen clips of it on TikTok, but I haven't watched it.
Please go ahead and watch that. It does have to do with sexual assault and everything. Of course, that movie is fiction. It is, you know, it's just a movie, but the themes of it and like the story, you know, it's something that happens to women or a lot of people all the time. And so that this case kind of just reminded me of that. And that is worth a watch as well if you're interested. That's all I wanted to close on.
Watch that. Watch Black Box Diaries.
Yes.
I'm also going to
read it.
Buy or rent her book from the library.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to. I think this is like worth a buy, if anything, you know. I'm going to buy it. Yeah, well, I'm not saying to you. I was just kind of like thinking back. Me. Like, I'm going to buy it. Like if I really, you know, support her.
I want that on my shelf.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was just kind of thinking like, you could get it at the library for free. I mean, I'm not judging anyone here, but I was just kind of thinking like, oh no, actually like I care about this case and care about her and support her enough. Like I would love to buy and own this book. Yeah. Probably both in Japanese and English. I think I want to buy 2 copies, but
hell
anyway,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for listening or watching and sticking around to the end if you have made it here, and we do appreciate all of your support.
Yep. If you have any comments, please keep them respectful, or also keep other people in check if there's any nasty stuff on there. If you see it before we do. So all right. Anyway. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Great.